You guys want to get some coffee or something?
Can I get a cup of coffee? Black? Can't you see we talking? White?
Even little kids in Mexico drink coffee.
Well, I'm not a little kid in Mexico, okay?
That is the best coffee I've ever tasted.
A damn fine cup of coffee.
You want a cup of coffee?
No coffee.
Coffee drinker, huh?
Maybe we could grab some coffee?
Coffee! Coffee!
God damn, Jimmy. That's some serious gourmet shit. Me and Vincent would have been satisfied with some freeze-dried Taster's Choice, right? And he springs this serious gourmet shit on us.
Yeah, absolutely badass. Welcome to Morning Coffee with Chris. My name is Christopher Moonlight, broadcasting from my moon base just a couple of blocks down from Scribe Light's lunar base. By the way, Scribe, I'm with the HOA. Cut your lawn. Today, we are talking about Aliens, the best James Cameron movie, in my personal opinion. But first, of course, Penny is here, and she's not here because she's watching another James Cameron movie, Avatar 2, The Way of the Water. I love James Cameron. I'm grateful to James Cameron. But before we get into it, let's bring in the panel. First of all, we have John.
Hello.
Good morning, Das Wolfen. And my honorary Oos, Joe's Atmosphere. Good morning.
Good morning to you, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. And of course, the glue that holds us all together, Martin. Thank you, Martin, as always.
Oops. Good morning, everybody.
Let's say good morning to everybody. So we've got a few people in the chat already. Again, Penny is here and not here. I'm sure we'll get a report on her opinions on Avatar Way of the Water. D-Bud Martin, Krampus Jeebus, thank you, come again. Alex Moore and Bill Barkley, thank you for joining us. So I'll just start out by saying, for me, I have a philosophy as a filmmaker and an artist, and that is the audience is always right. Sometimes it takes the audience a little bit time to be heard, to make up their mind, but they're always right. And you can ask individual audience members their varying opinions on different movies and that sort of thing. But ultimately, the what would you say? Posterity wills out. And Aliens is one of those movies that, you know, people will debate if it's the best kind of sequel to Alien or what, but it seems to be the one that we just all keep going back to. It's infinitely quotable. It's compelling. It brings more to the story and brings it to a satisfactory close. There were other sequels, and some people like them and some people don't. But genuinely, people, they just keep coming back to Alien and Aliens. It seems to work as one complete story arc. So I'm assuming everybody here are fans.
You kidding me? It was one of the greatest movies ever.
Ever.
In the history of ever.
And again, Martin makes fun of me for show and tell, but I still got the DVD set, not the Blu-ray set, because for some reason the Blu-ray like left out stuff.
Yeah, but you've got too many movies in that box.
Yeah, exactly. I will say this, the behind the scenes on this, I watch almost as religiously as the movies. And I'll even watch the behind the scenes on the films that I don't like, because it's so fascinating watching all the work and artistry that goes into it. Of course, my friend Alec Gillis, who may or may not join us today, I got a maybe from him, and I said that to Gary, and Gary put guest Alec Gillis in the thumbnail. So if anyone's here believing that he's definitely going to be here, I'll apologize ahead of time, but he probably will show up. We'll keep an eye out for him to see if he pops in for a little bit. But Alec worked on Aliens, his company with his partner at the time, Studio ADI, did Alien 3, did Alien Resurrection, did both Aliens versus Predator movies, and Prey. So he has a lot of experience. By the way, I saw Way of the Water. It was okay. Yeah, I have a theory. Again, I'm a James Cameron fan. I want to see him do well. There are different thoughts and opinions about his personality, his way of doing things. There's definitely an intensity and a madness to his passion for making films. I will say that James Cameron does his best work when he is up against adversity. I think his obsession with pushing the technology has definitely yielded some great results in terms of the technology, but his best work was when he really had to work in a budget and try and come up with all these clever ways to wow the audience. And I think that's part of his appeal, is that in the challenges that he faced realizing his vision, he had to think about the story more in terms of how to make it all compelling. And now I think he's a little too wrapped up in, just creating the next innovation. And that's just my personal opinion based on what I've observed. But I definitely think that we owe him a lot in terms of just how we view the blockbuster, the action movie, and just bringing actually some humanity to whatever story he touches. I think so I don't want to get into the James Cameron bashing club too readily. He's certainly done some of the most amazing movies. I mean, Terminator 2, both classics. I think Aliens holds a little stronger in the mind of the audience. And of course, there's The Abyss, varying opinions on that from person to person.
I'd rather watch The Abyss than Avatar.
Oh, I would too.
Yeah. Of course, True Lie.
And as John will probably be able to tell you, he took a rather generic disaster film and turned it into something spectacular in Titanic.
Titanic.
I mean, yeah, you can people can bash him all day long, but every great director is an asshat in one way or another, because they're very focused on what they want to see on the screen. And I mean, people say
can I be honest?
Crazy. So yeah, go ahead.
I would rather watch Piranha 2, The Spawning, than I would Titanic again.
Yeah. Well, it's probably because of the love story in it, right?
Yeah. If they set out, it would have been a great movie.
I figured. Yeah.
Kingsport Cal, yes, welcome to the show. And I did see that video. It's weird. I think part of it was when you get as big as James Cameron has gotten, you're in a bubble. And so you're getting all of the information about the audience response and that sort of thing. We're seeing it from one aspect. He's seeing it through a different filter. And, he's gotten a lot of flack through the years. So I imagine after a while, that gets to you. And I think that might have influenced his behavior. I'm not excusing it by any stretch of the imagination, but again, James Cameron's one of the most famous people in Hollywood. He's one of the biggest directors in the world. So I imagine
he's made great stuff. I mean, that first Terminator movie blew me away when I saw it when I was a kid. It was amazing. That opening scene with just the words on it, kind of like Star Wars starts. I mean, where he says the future will be decided here tonight. And I was like, wow, this looks awesome.
I mean, that just when you say that, you get chills.
Yeah.
Again, it's hard to explain to anyone that's a young person going to the movies today what an event like that, or what kind of an event a movie like that was. And it was completely unexpected because it was a lower budget movie.
Oh yeah. Big time. It was a B flick. No doubt.
Yeah. And James Cameron did amazing things. I mean, even though you look at it now and go, okay, those are miniatures, they're still awesome miniatures. And the the film grain, the music, it all seems very like 80s dated now, but it's just hard to explain what that moment in time, no pun intended, was for action movie fans, sci-fi fans.
I mean, he took a bunch of no-name actors, and if you watch the behind the scenes stuff on that, I saw an interview with him and Schwarzenegger saying how they were afraid they were going to get arrested half the stuff they were filming, but he took a bunch of no-namers. The only one anybody knew was Arnold Schwarzenegger, and that was because of his bodybuilding career. He was a joke as far as an actor.
Oh yeah, that's something that people don't
turned them into stars, all of them.
He had only done of course, Pumping Iron, the documentary, and he'd done
Hercules in New York.
Hercules in New York movie or something like that. Yeah, just dumbness. Yeah,
he had done Conan.
That's right. He had done Conan.
Yeah,
he had done Conan, and he they actually had to. I think they had to delay. Well, this goes to Aliens. So James Cameron wrote Aliens while they were waiting for Arnold Schwarzenegger, because he wanted him for that movie, and they had to wait because he was filming Conan 2, The Destroyer.
Yeah.
And so James Cameron he said it wasn't enough time for him to direct another movie, but it was enough time for him to take a writing assignment, which was Aliens. And he wrote 90 pages of Aliens, and it was still in the second act. And he turned it in. He said, okay, I don't have time to finish this, but here's what I've got so far. I've got to go direct Terminator. And according to producer Gail Ann Hurd, they read it. They loved it so much. They said, we're going to do the unthinkable. We're going to wait for you. And if your directorial debut, which they were saying, because Piranha 2, The Spawning wasn't really his movie, even though he directed it, it got taken out of his hands and screwed up. But they said, if this as your directorial debut in the public eye with Terminator does well, then we'll consider having you direct it, which at the time, according to Gail Ann Hurd, they were young and naive. That's usually a promise that never gets fulfilled. So it's actually a testament to how amazing his writing and his directing is that they were willing to wait on him for that. And everybody that I've ever heard an interview with that said they read a script of his in the early days said, a lot of scripts are just a slog to get through. Okay, I'm making notes here. This is the line I'm going to say or whatever. Everyone said it's like reading a good novel, a page turner. Like they read it and they finished it and then they read it again because this is so amazing. So everybody that read his scripts was instantly on board. The actors, the producers, they really were excited about his work. And again, the innovation of, and I am hoping that Alec does pop in because just for people who are not familiar with who Alec Gillis is, he's the co-founder of Studio ADI. He founded it with his partner, Tom Woodruff Jr. They got their start working for Alec for Roger Corman, which is where he met James Cameron. Actually, no, excuse me. That's wrong. He met James Cameron, and when he went to interview to get a job at Corman Studios, which I think was called New World Pictures, and I forget the name of the actual studio. I think it was called the Lumberyard. But in the special effects department, he didn't think he qualified, and he'll probably tell this story if he comes in. He knew James Cameron, and he'd seen a short film that James Cameron had done called Xenogenesis, which you can go find on YouTube. It's up there, which has a lot of seeds of things you'll see in Aliens. Anyway, he thought, okay, I'm probably not good enough to get this job, but maybe if I bring a friend and we kind of go in together. So he took James Cameron to the interview, and they both got jobs with Corman and working on first Battle Beyond the Stars.
Yes.
Which is, by the way, it's considered a Star Wars knockoff, but it's actually a great movie. Corman, it's kind of Corman's homage to both Star Wars and the Magnificent Seven, or the Seven Samurai.
Mm-hmm.
And Corman had a few movies that were kind of ripoffs of Kurosawa movies. But anyway, for that's where Cameron met Gail Ann Hurd. She was working as an assistant to Roger Corman, an assistant producer. And Roger was saying, hey, there's problems down in the special effects department for this movie. Why don't you go down there and see what's going on, see what the problem is? Well, she went down there and she ran right into James Cameron, who took her on a tour and was showing her everything he was building and what they were doing. And she thought he was in charge, but it turns out he wasn't. So her recommendation was, this guy really knows what he's doing. Fire the other guy, put James Cameron in charge. And again, Alec has stories about that. And if he comes on, I'll try and get him to tell those stories. But then they did another movie that they did several kind of sci-fi movies. A lot of it was recycling sets, but one of them was Galaxy of Terror, where Roger Corman, if you watch Galaxy of Terror, it looks so much better than any low-budget Roger Corman movie has a right to be. And that's because James Cameron used it as a place to experiment with his rear projection techniques, which has been used before by people like Kubrick on 2001: A Space Odyssey. And, now we do it with LED volumes. But from there, he worked with Alec Gillis. He worked with the Skotek brothers, who did the miniature effects for Aliens. And during that time, as he did Piranha 2: The Spawning after that, which Roger Corman, I don't think it was a Roger Corman production, but it was Roger Corman was kind of surprised. He's like, you're better than this. Why does this movie suck? And James Cameron explained it was the Italian producer who kind of wanted to use his name to get funding. We got this kid, James Cameron, who did all this work. And then he fired James Cameron and took over and effed it up. Mm-hmm. And welcome Sean Espen. He's joining us in the chat. So from there, he did Piranha 2: The Spawning, and then he was working on getting funding for Terminator, which he took on the writing assignment for Aliens. When he did Terminator,
before you go too far,
okay,
I wanted to tell this a little bit that you've probably heard, but some people may not have. He came up with the idea of Terminator when he had an upper respiratory infection.
Yes,
while he was shooting Piranha, he had 104 fever, and dreamt that movie into existence when he was sick.
He said
it was a nightmare he had. So yeah,
it was a
I
metal.
Just didn't know
skeleton.
If you knew that story or not, but yeah.
No, yeah, it was a metal skeleton walking through fire, I think he said. Mm-hmm. And at the time, he was working on Piranha 2: The Spawning, Lance Henriksen. Mm-hmm. Lance told the story of Ram Bam 3000. There's a movie called Planet of the Vampires, which is considered an influence, I'm assuming, of Alien. Yes. Planet of the Vampire, I've seen that movie several times, and both then he ripped off Harlan Ellison.
Everybody rips him off. Come on,
yeah.
man.
And I want to say
famous science fiction writers ever.
It's one of those things where you can always kind of look back and see someone who did something similar before. I wouldn't say that there's definitely time travel elements and, future war elements and that sort of thing. I do think that I'm a firm believer that creativity is mostly just mixing and remixing experiences that we have, whether it be through our life experiences or what we see other artists doing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think the idea that it's a ripoff or theft or something like that, it's if we play that game through to its logical conclusion, we wouldn't be creating anything.
No.
Is the Alien TV series still happening or not? Unfortunately, it is, as far as I've heard. I'm not looking forward to it at all. It's got, from what I've heard from the treatment, it's essentially Alien Freaky Friday. It's literally brain swapping. I don't want to get too far off course, but we will get into that. The Terminator is a ripoff of Evil Maria from Metropolis down to the metal endoskeleton being revealed in a fire. The concept of metal under robots is nothing new. Metropolis probably did it first, and Metropolis is one of the very early sci-fi movies. But you look throughout history of science fiction B movies, there's always a robot in humanoid form with some metal underneath in one degree or another. There's a difference between homage and ripoff is citation. Also sometimes people just have similar ideas.
Chris.
Yeah.
I think you have your own version of the backdoor. Look here.
Oh, I wasn't going to bring it up today. And, weirdly, and I know I brought this up a bunch of times. I'm a huge practical effects fan. And I know this is kind of a weird idea, but you can definitely be enthusiastic about different mediums. If Alec comes on again, he has a saying that I absolutely love, which is, if all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. Well, there's just different tools for different situations. I talk about AI more another. Hey, I'll make an announcement on my own YouTube channel starting in January. I'm going to have a series where I interview different AI users. There's so many of them. They're using them for so many different reasons. Some of them are artists, entertainers, video game developers. Some of them are people who are disabled and had never had the chance to be creative because of that. There's just all sorts of people who have stories to tell about why they're using AI. And so I'm going to do a show where I interview and listen to their stories and their point of view on it. So it's not just me ranting about it. But going back to, Piranha 2: The Spawning, he was working with Lance Henriksen. And I got to see Lance Henriksen at Texas Frightmare Weekend a few years ago, where he talked about Piranha 2: The Spawning. He's like, look, I had the easiest job. I just stayed in my hotel at night and came down and recited my lines. James was in there with his making extra piranhas. There wasn't enough piranhas in his hotel room at night, and then he'd be up in the morning directing everyone. It's my Lance Henriksen impersonation. Thank you. So, of course, they became friends. And then when James Cameron started pitching Terminator, originally it was Lance Henriksen that he kind of had, with the artwork. And they did a pitch meeting where Lance Henriksen, being a character actor, decided to kick in the door of the office where they held the pitch meeting and scare the crap out of the receptionist. And they loved the pitch. They said, but not that guy. I guess Lance Henriksen pissed them off so much that they're like, no, he's not the Terminator, but we'll do the movie. Kingsport Cal, you can absolutely ask questions. It's an ongoing topic. So anyway, during Terminator, he got Stan Winston at the time, who had his Stan Winston studio. And why does Chris sound like Fat Steven? Is that my Lance Henriksen impersonation? So Tom Woodruff Jr. was working for Stan Winston. And
Stan Winston, what a name, man.
Yeah, so Tom actually sculpted the endoskeleton parts for the puppet that they used. Stan Winston, of course, originally the Terminator was going to be all stop motion, and Stan said, I think we can do this as a puppet as well. Mm-hmm. So Tom was one of the puppeteers. They did the famous scene where he's cutting out the eye, and you can see the the machinations, the metal tendon,
the wrist. Yeah.
All great tricks. A lot of it was, stage tricks, people under tables and just wonderful stuff. And from there, when James Cameron did Aliens, of course, Tom Woodruff came on. By that time, Alec Gillis had been hired on to Stan Winston's studio. I think they had done Invaders from Mars. And I can't remember what came first, but within the space of like 2.5 years, Tom Woodruff and Alec Gillis would work on Invaders from Mars, Aliens, Pumpkinhead. Tom and Alec created Pumpkinhead, the suit, and Tom wore it. Monster Squad, again, where Tom was the Gill Man. And what else? They worked on Predator, although they weren't on the set for Predator. So all the classic movies. And then they went on to create their own studio, Studio ADI, where their first movie would be, I forget exactly what their exact first movie would be, but the first big one that they worked on was Tremors. After Tremors, for a long time, they barely got any work. And then Fox decided they were going to do Alien 3. They called up Stan Winston. Stan Winston said, I already did Aliens and I'm working on other stuff. Why don't you call these guys that used to work for me, Studio ADI? So they did Alien 3 with David Fincher and then went on to do the rest of that stuff. So, where to begin with Aliens? Do any of you kind of, my mother loved Pumpkinhead. She had it on VHS. That's a really good movie, by the way.
Yeah. Yes, it is. I love it too, man.
And it's heartbreaking too. Again, I mean, we could do a whole episode on just Lance Henriksen and why he's awesome.
Well, when it comes to Aliens, what I think's funny is we talk all this stuff about AI, which is actually CGI, folks. It's not artificial intelligence. Terminator is the nightmare of artificial intelligence. We talk about AI, art, and all this stuff, which Cameron actually, if you remember, the Liquid Metal Man was the first CGI character in a movie besides the tentacle in the abyss. But
also,
Aliens is made with nothing but practical effects, folks. There's nothing computer generated in it except for maybe the models that they, the jump ship kind of thing and the spaceships, but everything in it it's all practical effects. It's all guys in suits and puppets and all kinds of stuff, man.
Miniatures.
Really cool. Yeah.
And all stuff, by the way, for all of my enthusiasm about AI, and also one of the things about AI that interests me isn't the technology itself, but the psychological reaction that people are having towards it is very telling to me in ways that I'll probably write about soon on my Substack. But honestly, I am and always have been a huge practical effects enthusiast.
Oh, it looks so much better. You like, before we get too far away from the Terminator, my favorite shot in Terminator is when he puts his fist through the windshield of the car when they're backing up, trying to get away from him in the first shootout. I mean, that right there, it's Arnold, but his arms pinned behind his back, and they have this. It was run by hydraulics, the fist that went through the windshield, and it just looks so real. It's really cool,
And not only that, but the car going backwards. You see the alleyway running behind him.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a real alleyway.
No, they're sitting still.
They're sitting still. It's I believe they actually built it as a prop, like a forced perspective prop, and they had it mounted to a truck. Mm-hmm. And the truck was actually slowly driving away. Yeah. So what you perceive as, the environment moving behind him as the car backs up is actually the car standing still and the environment being pulled away in the other direction as they do that. And it's those wonderful tricks. And like you said, I think CGI as a tool for storytelling is great in a lot of instances, but at the same time, I almost feel like the more realistic they are able to make it, the less interesting it becomes. Where in the other direction, sometimes you have practical effects that may not look real, but they look beautiful and they look interesting. And even when there's a degree of artifice to the movie, it looks like you're watching something that is crafted and just, I don't, you guys everyone probably knows this. And welcome, Dragon Ruse, and Shinosky. I am a huge practical effects enthusiast, and I work in practical effects. I make practical effects miniatures. I build miniatures all the time. I build puppets. My movie, The Quantum Terror, is a practical effects movie. I mean, there's some green screen stuff, but there's no CGI creatures in that. It is all practical, and I work in practicals because I love working in practical effects. And again, that's not any slight against CGI. I'll probably use it in the future for certain things. I know I'm using it for Escape from Planet Omega 12, but again, the whole reason I'm doing Escape from Planet Omega 12 is that I want to mix CGI, traditional hand-drawn animation, and miniatures together because I love working with those things and I want to tell stories in that way. And I think that when it comes to James Cameron and the practical effects, everything he was working towards between Terminator and Galaxy of Terror, and That'll Be on the Stars, it was all working to this point, which is Aliens, which I believe is his masterpiece. Now, I saw someone before post that Terminator 2 is James Cameron's best movie. My personal opinion, James Cameron has like a few masterpieces, and Terminator 2 is one of them. And I think it just comes down to your preference at that point. I think I would put, in terms of masterpieces, the first two Terminators, Aliens. Okay, so there's three.
There's the Abyss. Yeah, I was fixing to say, man, come on. There's about four that I can think of off the top of my head.
Terminator, I would say the Abyss,
Aliens, Titanic, and Avatar. There's four right there. I think about Avatar, but it's the highest grossing movie of all time. Numbers don't lie.
Yeah, again, when I say the audience is always right, I don't say that in terms of box office. I think in terms of longevity in the audience zeitgeist is really where it tells. I think the Avatar is kind of faded in people's minds. I didn't really like it, and it wasn't because it was CGI.
The sequel nobody asked for, really.
Yeah, I mean, I watched Avatar once, and I went, "This isn't for me. It's not speaking to me. It's not exciting me."
I call it Fern Gully.
Yeah, I mean, all of that, those Dances with Wolves, Fern Gully, that sort of thing. That stuff didn't bother me. If it had been done in a way that, like I said, I'm just not the audience for that. And maybe there is. There are people that were supposedly getting depressed and suicidal because they couldn't live in Pandora. I think that
what? I mean,
they've got bigger problems than just that.
Exactly.
That is made up. That is just I when I heard those stories, I was like, why are you pushing this? You got to ask yourself, why are they saying this? Why are they putting this story out there? Please give me a break.
Yeah. And as far as Titanic goes, I view Titanic as two movies mashed into one. You have the story of Jack and Rose, which is a great story. And then in the middle of that story, it gets interrupted for another movie called The Boat Sinks.
Yeah. Which is a great story in itself. I mean, it was very educational to watch that movie, especially when the architect was explaining why they were going to go down, and stuff like that. It was pretty cool.
I think the Boat Sinks is almost a documentary with reenactments rather, and it's James Cameron. I think it's the first time James Cameron really got in his own way. For me, that those two stories could have mashed together, But when the boat starts sinking, it's all about James Cameron being fascinated with the sinking of the Titanic. And suddenly he doesn't know what to do with Jack and Rose. So all they do is kind of run around the boat, you know?
Mm.
And you got to imagine, I think Jack just died because he was tired just after all that running.
Jack died because the Rose was a selfish bitch and wouldn't let him crawl up on the door with her.
Yeah, Rose murdered Jack.
My favorite meme of that is Rose on the door and Jack in the water, and someone photoshopped in like 3 dogs, and she's like, "Sorry, Jack, there's no room on here for you."
That would be my wife. Yeah.
Or whose line is it anyway? Wayne Brady did a bit where they're like alternative endings to the Titanic. So Wayne Brady's pretending to hold on to the door. He's like, "Rose, I love you." "Oh, hey, I can stand up." So anyway, going back to Aliens though.
Well, I wanted to say something about James Cameron real quick.
Is it nice?
Yeah, it is. It's just people don't realize as a director, he's not that prolific. He only has 9 films, not counting the 2 Avatars in the pipe that he's directed.
He's done a lot of producing.
He's kind of the Daniel Day-Lewis of directors. He only does one every few years, you know. Yeah, it's not a constant bunch of work. Yep.
I would like to comment.
Bless
on
you
something.
again and again.
Whew. Anyway, yeah. So I mean, but he's written, he's directed, he's done executive produces, he's done special effects for movies. He's done a lot. But when it comes down to directing, he's only done 9 movies.
Mm-hmm.
And Martin, you said you had something to say?
Yeah,
9 feature films.
To Ramban. I don't know if any of you have seen the extended edition of the original Terminator, of the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, then you know that Terminator 2, half the movie of Terminator 2 was included in Terminator.
Yes.
Because the Sarah and Kyle, they don't appear casually near Cyberdyne. They went to Cyberdyne as a Sarah's idea. Sarah says, she decides to become a Terminator and go and destroy Cyberdyne before Cyberdyne could get big.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a lot of it. Well, yeah, you see at the end of the first Terminator that it's not just full circle that Kyle Reese fathered her child that would become John Connor, but also the fact that the Terminator getting crushed happened to be crushed at Cyberdyne, and it was Cyberdyne found the parts which inspired them to start working on the Skynet program,
which makes you think the story of Terminator, the original story of Terminator in Cameron's mind, maybe it wasn't house that Skynet sends the Terminator to kill John. No, Skynet sends the Terminator so Skynet can be.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So it can exist to begin with. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A lot of James Cameron's original ideas for Terminator were, like you said, they showed up in Terminator 2. He wrote the Dark Fate script. I didn't know that. But he had ideas for liquid metal. That was originally what the Terminator was going to have, some form of liquid metal as well. That was an idea that he had, as well as I think he was toying with the idea of the sun even back then. I watched Avatar and I said, "Oh wow, look at all those blue things sitting on resources we need. They need to be civilized and teach them about us so we can take them in a fight."
Colonialist.
So, but anyway, James Cameron is, he's got such a great imagination and so many interesting ideas. You know, I think again, I think a lot of great creators essentially will suffer from their ego telling them that they can now interject themselves into the creative process. And I know that's kind of a weird thing to say, but I think the creative process works best when an artist knows to get out of their own way. You know, as soon as you start thinking, I can use my stories as a vehicle to tell people how they should think or what they should think about something, then you are cluttering your story with essentially propaganda. And there's, you know, that's, again, you can use stories to do whatever you want, but I think they'll suffer for it. And I think that you know, a great example of when a story does well is when you just use an idea as the basis, as the launch pad, and then you go from there. James Cameron at the time was very interested in the Vietnam War. So the Aliens became kind of a Vietnam era retelling of the
that
first
makes
movie.
a lot of sense with the Marines and everything. That's really cool. Yeah.
And you,
by the way, talking about the creative process and the writing of it, I'm looking here on IMDb and just found out something I did not know. Walter Hill had a hand in the story, not the screenplay, but the story of it. Walter Hill, one of my favorite action guys ever. So yeah, that tells me a lot about that story right there. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell
I
you,
wonder it was one of those white knuckle shows right from the beginning, you know? Yeah.
Okay, so Walter Hill's instructions to James Cameron were Marines were his idea.
Yeah.
Said Sigourney Weaver comes back, you know, they send the Marines. This was his notes. They send the Marines, and then some bullshit happens. And essentially that was James Cameron's writing job, is fill in what the bullshit is. And also James Cameron, at the same time as writing the script for Aliens, took on another writing assignment, which was for Rambo 2. And they both are Vietnam era style stories about someone who gets to go back and win this time. And he even says it in Rambo 2 when he comes to Rambo at the, you know, like the chain link fence at the, you know, the prison that he's working at.
Right.
And he gives him the mission, and Rambo says, "Do we get to win this time?"
This time, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's what Sigourney Weaver's character as Ripley. That's what it's about. You get to go back and win this time. You get to go back and you know, and I think as far as primal stories go, you know, you harken back to the original oral tradition tales of hunters going out into the wilderness, into the dark, before electricity, when the dark was the dark. You know, you had the campfire, and then everything around you was like weird noises in the night. You didn't know what that was. And so they tell stories. They make up what that stuff was. And there were a lot of hunters that went out there and didn't return. But the ones that did would come back with stories. And then armed with that knowledge, they would then go back and confront it and overcome it and better themselves, which is really what Sigourney Weaver, again, as Ripley, what Ripley's story arc is her going back and reclaiming a little bit of what she lost. And at the same time, you know...
Well, yeah, I mean, mentally, it was a cleanse for her, because at the beginning of the movie, oh my God, she's still having nightmares from it and stuff. It's horrible. Her existence after surviving everything she did in that first movie turned out to be shit. She was basically driving a forklift in a factory.
Yeah,
what she was
and
doing.
Shinosky, I agree with you. Pitch Black, Except the Stars. Pitch Black was good. I enjoyed that. I like. But going back, I did a video with Scribe Light, a live stream a while ago, based on something that I wrote for my Substack, which was Storytelling 101 as told through aliens, which I'll plug my stuff at some point. But essentially, her story arc is, she goes, yes, I have, and I can comment on that. But we'll get to that. She goes from going back, and being the only person that knows. It's like she's armed with the knowledge of what's out there, and nobody believes her, and and everyone's arrogant. Again, that's kind of James Cameron's take on the Vietnam era attitude. Is like, oh, we're armed to the teeth. We'll take on these savages, no problem. And then they get their asses handed to them.
And don't forget the Mission Sovereign, played by a rather good comedian, Paul Reiser.
Yeah,
is blinded by greed. Let's not forget that. He doesn't care what the danger is. There's a whole lot of money on the line for him. So
yeah. And it's interesting too, because that his character takes it from being, before it was the company as a whole. Now it's not the company so much. The company has a vested interest in the colony, thriving.
Mm-hmm.
It's just corrupt individuals within the company screwing things up.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul Reiser at the time was unknown.
Name.
What's that?
Burke is the character's name.
Yeah, Burke. Carter Burke. But don't let that fool you. He's really an okay guy.
He's really an okay guy. Yeah.
Stranger Things, by the way, did a nice homage to him, kind of, because everyone loves Paul Reiser in real life. So they gave him the opportunity to replay that character as the nice guy.
Really?
Yeah. Have you not watched Stranger Things?
No, I haven't, man. I watched my wife and I. Look, if you don't get us going in the first 5 episodes, we're done. And that show, a friend of mine told me, he said, Joe, it's us in the 80s playing Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, you got to watch it. And I was like, okay. I watched the first 5 episodes and was like bored to tears. I was like, okay, whatever. I'm sure it's great, but I don't have the time for this. If you're gonna, I've got plenty of other stuff to watch. So yeah, I haven't gotten into it. I hear it's great, and I'm not poo-pooing on it. I just, me personally, wasn't my cup of tea. Didn't get.
That's in my opinion, that is completely fair. I'm the same way. It's very hard to get me into stuff. If I'm not interested, I'm not interested. I don't want people trying to.
I'll try it. But it's like Peripheral, the new one that's on Amazon. We tried about 4 episodes of that, and it's just not going anywhere. Yeah, she's in the Matrix. Okay, we've seen this. Tell me something new. No.
Anyway, yeah, they did in the 2nd season. They gave him the role of, essentially, he's playing Carter Burke again, but he's a good Carter Burke. He actually can be trusted. But anyway, going back to Aliens, she's, like you said, she's traumatized. She's just running a forklift. No one believes her. When they do start to believe her, they're arrogant about it. And her attitude, her whole arc is this: I'm not going back there. It's not worth it. I'll die. Yeah. At the end of the movie, they're telling her, don't go into the hive. And she's saying, Newt's in there.
Yeah.
She's worth it. I don't care if I die.
Right. Yeah. She becomes the mother figure.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the great thing about her arc is all of a sudden she does give a shit again. And it takes.
So we learn, and this isn't in the theatrical edition, but I think it is something that in the director's cut that really enhances the story. Not every additional scene in Aliens, the director's cut enhances the story, but they're all bitching. But the big one is that you find out that Ripley, she's been in hypersleep for 57 years. She hasn't aged, which is a really cool sci-fi concept. And, people always use it as, before that, use that concept as just like, oh, in order to make this long journey, we'll have to sleep, like what Stanley Kubrick did, because we'll go crazy on this trip, or we'll just age and die because it's so long. And they use this in a creative way. What if it's the return trip and everything is gone, including your daughter, who apparently, in an original draft, her daughter was still alive. And she actually did get to talk to her, and her daughter was callous towards her. Like, You left me, you abandoned me.
Yeah.
I don't want anything to do with you, which I'm glad they didn't do, because, it kind of, it almost kind of hardens you towards her daughter in a way.
Well, I'll put it to you this way, and it's just a sidebar about the editing process of movies. A lot of people love these extended cuts and all this stuff. The one I hear about the most is Lord of the Rings. That there's so much stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor that it really enhances the story. I'm fine with that. I prefer to watch movies the way I saw them in the theater the first time. I figured there's a reason why that stuff ended up on the cutting room floor. They streamlined it for a reason, So
for time.
yeah,
In Lord of the Rings, it's for time. It has
yeah.
nothing to do with directorial choices or
Yeah, and
what
I've heard
have
that.
you.
I've heard that it's just dynamite stuff that enhances the story, and I'll probably watch it one of these days. But for the thing I always point out is the original Star Wars trilogy. When they put the CGI stuff in there, it takes away from it for me,
Yeah,
because
does
that's
me
not what
too.
I saw in the theater. That's not what
Yeah.
I saw. That's not what blew me away when I was 12, 15, 18 years old, so yeah.
That was George Lucas. Yeah, he said, well, this is always the movie I wanted. I just couldn't make it because the technology was there. The interesting thing about a movie is what you did with what you had.
Yeah. See,
You know,
I would suggest, and this is just me, watch the movie the way it was presented originally, then watch the deleted scenes afterwards and say, oh, wow, that is cool. That might have worked,
my
Yeah.
comment on, if you watch the extended edition with James Cameron's commentary, he said, this is the movie I wanted to be in the theater, but we had to cut it for time.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, James Cameron's the added stuff is take it or leave it. It's all entertaining. Like with the Lord of the Rings extended, I will say this: it makes the story feel so much more rich.
Yeah,
and the performances and that sort of thing. None of it feels like it's dragging the movie.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, the director's cut of Alien is an inferior cut, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It adds a scene where Ripley finds Dallas, and
I remember seeing pictures of that. Yeah, I didn't see the scene itself, but yeah,
it's interesting. She walks.
He's all
into
cocooned up, and
yeah, and it's very H.R. Giger. It's very cool to look at.
Yeah,
but there's no place for it in the movie. It's literally while it takes place while she's trying to escape while the countdown is going on, and suddenly you stop for this kind of quiet, creepy scene, which is a good scene, but it is it just doesn't fit. And then they
have an homage to that in Aliens, don't they? When the first soldier finds the girl and she's alive and she's saying "kill me," right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it works in there, and there's a great scene where or in that scene she says Burke says, "What is that?" And she goes, "I don't know." So it doesn't make sense even because if you include the scene in the original Alien cut, then
you would know what that was. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where again, I think Ridley Scott even said, no, the cut that made it into the theater was the cut I wanted. It's just we were doing a special edition and they wanted a new cut with some new material, so I did that. And he also cut out some interesting, I don't know, he made little cuts here and there that are, he just thought, well, I could tighten this up or this or that, and he ended up kind of cutting out stuff that I think really worked. But every artist given an opportunity to fix some things here and there, I think you don't always. Artists are kind of the worst people to ask about their work anyway, because every artist changes their mind over time about what their intent is, and then they want to do something to reflect that. And I think that that's not good. With the director's cut of Aliens, it was the cut he decided on from the start. It's just after that they looked at it and said, we won't get enough showings in the theater, you got to cut more out. And so it's you know, it is the cut he wanted you to see originally, and I think it is a great cut. And just including in there that she had a daughter that waited and waited and died, and she never got to know and never had any children, so her lineage is over. You know, that in itself just lets the audience decide. So so we're an hour in, and I'm getting used to this new format because of our you know, we're broadcasting on KGRA. So are we
in
supposed
January?
to do what?
In January.
In
January.
But we're getting used to it. Are we supposed to do something at the hour mark? Is there...
I was just letting Martin know that
Yeah, I know. But I'm doing the full simulation here, so I'm waiting to we reach minute 59.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, I was just reminding him. It's a musical cue that Gary wants to use.
Yeah, let's have a preview.
Yeah, you'll hear that right before the hour to let you know to wrap it.
Yeah, it's our Oscar playing us off moment.
Yeah, that's it.
And what do I say? We'll be back right after this.
Yeah, commercial break.
We gotta have
it's where we
up against the hour. Yeah,
it's where our bumpers would be for the commercials.
Now, when are you supposed to do that, Martin? Like 2 minutes beforehand? Is that it?
1 minute before.
1 minute beforehand? Yeah, that's
so. So that's essentially like come to my conclusion.
That's it. If you hear that music, that means it's just think Inception. Oh, I've only got a few seconds before before the kick. I've got to get going.
So anyway,
well, Joe, I like that thing so much that is my wake up alarm.
There you go. That's cool. That's cool, man.
That's how, if I did that, that would be like my dream that I'm at work. Like, why is the music playing? Do I have to? What was I talking about? Like, I wake up panicking. Like, I'm supposed to be wrapping it up.
Yeah.
Oh,
there you go. But Aliens is one of my favorite movies ever. The whole thing with them going back and needing Ripley. I mean, they crucified her, if you remember, in the opening of it. They crucified her. They threw her under the bus. That's how she ends up working in manufacturing because, they just basically, she became the scapegoat of everything that went wrong. And then within a few months, the colony, they can't talk to him. And, this chick might have known what she was talking about. Yeah, let's go on our hands and knees and see if we can't get her to come with us.
Yeah, she says, I can't believe this. You guys throw me to the wolves and now you want me to go back?
Yeah.
Yes, Michael Biehn replaced James Remar at the last moment as Hicks, but if you see the 1995 Judge Dredd movie, James Remar shows up as one of the gangbangers and he's toting a pulse rifle. Oh, that's funny.
Wow.
Yes, James Remar was using drugs and that was frowned upon in England where they were shooting. He himself said it's not like now where you get a slap on a wrist and sent to rehab. It's like, no, they threw the book at him.
I think that's just I don't know what you'd call it, but it's serendipity. I don't think it would have been as effective with James Remar. James Remar is a great bad guy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the movie I always remember him from is what is it? Another 48 Hours? No, the first 48 Hours movie with Nick Nolte and a very young and upcoming comedian named Eddie Murphy. He was the bad guy in that movie, and he was awesome. He really was. But I can't see him as I can't see him as whatever this guy's name was. Isn't he a corporal? And he ends, Hicks. He's a corporal though, right? He's nowhere near the boss, and he ends up after their initial contact being the boss of the military unit, right? Yeah,
just a grunt. No offense.
Yeah. That's what he is. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Now, I think that Michael Biehn also makes an excellent bad guy, both in The Abyss. And
The Abyss. He's awesome. Yes,
but yeah, he definitely personified that role, made it iconic.
See, in The Abyss, though, and I don't want to go too far off kilter here, but in The Abyss, I don't see him as a bad guy because he was clearly affected by the pressure.
Yeah.
Okay. I think he's just paranoid is what it is, but he comes out as a bad guy because of the stuff
he did a good job portraying that as well.
Yes, he did with the tremors and everything. Yeah,
that he was wigging out. He's really good. I mean, I think that's what gave him his intensity as Kyle Reese in Terminator as well, because he wasn't just like your strapping, confident hero.
Yeah, he's just an average guy trying to get it done, whatever it is, whatever the mission is, let's get it done. Yeah.
He came through time broken.
Yeah.
I mean, just absolutely, he grew up in the aftermath of a nuclear apocalypse, watching his friends get
this
killed.
Whole world to him when he shows up in Terminator is alien. He is just freaked out by it. He doesn't know what to think.
Yeah, he's trying.
When he confronts that first cop trying to find out what year it is, you can tell that guy's scared to death. He's around stuff he's never seen before. Yeah,
and he does such a good job of just kind of internalizing that. It's not outwardly spoken, but you sense it from just the way his presence in front of the camera.
Yeah,
and in Aliens, he does a good job of just being like he's maybe a little more self-aware than the rest of the Marines.
Yeah.
And that's what gives him his energy. And so when James Remar was fired, he said he was sitting at home just watching TV. He said it was a Friday night, and he gets a call, and it's Gail Ann Hurd, and she's like, "Is your passport in order?" And he said, "If my passport wasn't in order, they probably would have just gotten someone else." They just said, "Can you be here? Can you hop on a plane and be here Sunday?" And he's like, "Yeah." So the other Marines had gone through. They had actually gotten a couple of Marines to put them through drills and teach them how to salute. And they had them. There's a really cute story. Carrie Henn, who plays Newt, she wanted to be part of it. So she would. There's the music. They would train and they'd run with their guns, and she would grab her Cabbage Patch doll and run behind them because she wanted to be part of it. She was kind of encircled by the Marines. And then here comes Michael Biehn, the odd man out. So, and we'll be back after these messages.
There you go.
And then we should cut to... I apologize to our audiences that they're being used as a guinea pig.
Yes, the guinea pigs. So anyway, so Michael Biehn came in, and he was happy. He's like, I got his paycheck, I got his outfit, I got his billing.
Yeah.
The only thing that bothered him was that James Remar, they had all gotten to paint their own armor, like customize it. Like they were, because he said these were kind of like,
that was a Vietnam thing. They all wrote on their stuff, and they wrote messages on their stuff and peace signs and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
The idea, people always say like, oh, they don't act like real Marines. I'm like, yeah, but this is the future. B, this is Bill Barclay says rest in peace, Bill Paxton. Yes.
Yeah. Another one of the Marines that stole every scene he was in. Oh my God, he was awesome.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Love Bill Paxton so much. I'm still dead. But
sorry. I hit the wrong button.
Oh, this guy.
Technical difficulties. We're still working on it. So anyway, the thing about it is
do it, John. Do it. Do it now.
The goddamn robots, John.
Born to Kill is a great song by The Dam, by the way. Anyway, Michael Biehn said, the only thing he didn't like about the customized uniform is he's like, James Remar had painted a bright red heart in the middle of the camouflage, right where his heart actually was. And he's like, to me, that seems like, giving your enemy a bullseye
target, right? Yeah.
But he said, there's even a shot in Aliens that has James Remar in it. They had done a forced perspective gag for The Hive. And, in Hollywood, as soon as you shoot it, once you've got it in the can and it's wrapped, they trash it. So they actually, and welcome Peter Bakeman's fan site. They had essentially done the shot of the Marines walking into the hive. They had the forced perspective gag. They shot it. They got it in the can, and then they trashed it. And then James Remar got fired for being arrested for drug use. And they were freaking out. But they managed to see that this in the shot, James Remar is turned away from the camera for a certain amount of time, and then he turns and looks. They just cut that part out. So you actually do have a shot in the movie with James Remar. But yeah, same thing. Bill Paxton, another person who auditioned for a Marine. He'd worked as a carpenter for Roger Corman and had worked with James Cameron. They were friends. And Bill Paxton didn't think he was going to get it. He's like, it's hard to audition for your friends because they see right through you. They know who you are. So they know when you're bullshitting. So he auditioned and he just kind of went like, it's a bit heavy handed. James Cameron handed him a poster tube for his rifle and he did his thing. And he went like, I'm probably not going to get it. And he said he got a call. He was living in Venice at the time in his apartment. He had just done Weird Science.
Yeah.
And
yes. The evil brother. Yes.
And he was actually going to be one
Anybody
of the
with a haircut
Police
like that,
Academy
he's an
movies.
asshole.
So he got a phone call from his agent, and his agent was like, what do you call it? Something in baseball? He's like, left field. He's like, yeah, left field. He's like, James Cameron's going to call you. You just got the part of Hudson in Aliens. And he said he yelled so loud. He's like, I think everybody in Venice knew that I got the part. So yeah, and he's gotten flack for, maybe overacting the bit, but again, yeah, he's so good at embodying the confidence, because this is the idea, people say, oh, the Marines, they didn't do anything procedural. They should have left someone up at the ship, all that stuff. Like, no, the whole point is these Marines have such a been there, done that attitude, and they've been out in space. They're not like part of the, they're not on a base or anything. They're out there doing their own thing, painting their own armor. They've gotten really cocky, very casual about things. They're like, yeah, we'll fly down, we'll fly back up, no problem. It's their hubris, which is embodied in Bill Paxton. And then when things go wrong, Bill Paxton is kind of like, just falls apart. But then he redeems himself at the end.
Out like a boss. Are you kidding me? Oh, you want some too? Here, I got some for you. I mean, he was going off, man. That was awesome. Yeah.
The thing about it is for all of his freaking out, every time a situation arose, like when face huggers going after Newt,
right? He
stepped right in. The training was still there.
Yeah. He reacted quick. Yeah.
So that's he was just such a great performance. And again, making Sigourney Weaver had, she wasn't there for their training or anything like that. She was coming off another film. So she said it really helped her with her character kind of feel like the outsider.
The outsider, yeah.
And yeah, someone mentioned Jeanette Goldstein, who played Vasquez again.
Oh my God, she was great.
Yeah. Her audition, there was the rumor that she had come in thinking that it was a part for an illegal alien, and that
they have a joke.
That was actually see. There was a rumor that kind of spread about that because they thought that joke in the movie was because she came in. Like she's like, no, she's like that was in the script. She's like, the only thing that was different is I showed up like dressed nice, hair down, lipstick, that sort of thing,
right,
for the role. But it was actually because James Cameron, there was a bodybuilder, a female bodybuilder he was originally going to cast, but she was very Christian. She had problems with things in the script. She didn't want to swear. And she started trying to dictate to James Cameron. James Cameron was like, okay, you're out. Let's audition someone for Vasquez. And it just turned out that, Jeanette Goldstein was a muscular woman. So she's like, oh, you want muscles? Like here, she flexed for him and she read for the part. And so they cast her, but she has a great arc as well, that kind of goes under the radar, but essentially the arc of like her and Drake they're the aircraft gun
and they are
partners.
best friends. It's obvious. I mean, they're not bang buddies, if you know what I'm saying, but they are definitely tight. Those two are. I mean, that is a duo. Those two right there.
Battle
Yeah.
Boo.
As Gary, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Thanks, Martin, for stepping on my line.
Well, the thing about it too is that's something that I think a lot of people don't understand about the military is how close people get.
Yeah.
Someone on the outside would look and go like, "Oh, they're a thing." It's like, no, they're like you said.
No,
they're
just that tight mentally. They're on the same page. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And they've got the same job. They're both aircraft gun. I mean, those are aircraft guns, anti-aircraft guns that they're got on Steadicam gimbals. Mm-hmm. But they're best friends. And it was Gorman. First of all, when Gorman steps in as like the new commander with no experience and is, acting better than all of them.
Which happens all the time in the military.
Yeah.
This is not crazy at all.
And they spot it instantly. And then it's his dropping the ball that gets her best friend killed. And you notice essentially throughout it's mostly unspoken. Mostly. I mean, there's a part where she, he's passed out and she's like gonna kill him. They have to pull her away from him.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But essentially just through looks, there's a story of how she sees him as someone who doesn't deserve to be in charge, who got her friend killed.
Or even further, somebody that's going to get them all killed because he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
But then he redeems himself.
He does.
And they come to not, they don't like each other, but they come to an understanding where he comes in.
Hey, we got to do this. Yeah. Or they're not going to make it. Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He goes back for her and chooses to die with her and pull the pin on the grenade so that they don't get taken by the aliens. And when she clasps her hand over his, you can see that's an understand. She says, "You always were an asshole, Gorman," but at the same time, it's like, okay, you redeemed yourself.
Yeah.
In an act of heroism, and so that's a great arc within the story.
Yeah,
and that's again the great thing about James Cameron's writing in those days, and it's still there, but not to the degree, not to the potency when he was in his heyday. Is he pays attention to every character. Again, I've heard people say, "Oh, the Marines are really one-dimensional." And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Right?
What
that is some of the best, and I'm sure Gary would agree with me. That is some of the best military dialogue they have in any movie. Is what goes on in Aliens, no doubt about it.
And it's. I mean, they're funny. The camaraderie is instant. You don't need to spend a bunch of time. You see, a lot of writers will think that character development is backstory. Like in Alien 3, where the Dr. Clemens tells his backstory, they're like, "Oh, he's got such character development." I'm like, no, he just monologued his backstory. That's not character development. Character development is when you're dropped into seeing Marines waking up and having breakfast together, and you instantly know what they're about just by the way they're interacting with each other. Mm-hmm. And you instantly feel like you know them and that you're able to move forward. And then we see their characters develop and go through an arc. Even minor characters that die right away. There's that, great scene where Hicks, and I forget the name of the guy he's with, but he's, they're told, "We can't have any fire in there. Collect all the ammunition." And the guy goes, "What are we supposed to use, man?
It's
harsh language?"
Frost. Yeah, it's
Frost.
It's the black fella Frost. Yes.
And then when Hicks pulls out the shotgun and just says, "I like to keep this handy for close encounters," and he just says, "I heard that." Just in that little exchange, there's so much nuance in how they're interacting with each other. You know that those guys have been working together for a while. Yeah. And they understand each other completely. So, kudos to James Cameron for giving us such rich characters who, by the way, it's not like a slasher movie where when somebody dies, you're like, "Oh, that was a cool death." Every time someone dies, you're like, "Oh, not him or not her." You want to see them make it. Mm-hmm. The APC looked great too. Same with the dropship. All right.
Yeah.
Perfect time to start talking about one of my favorite aspects of the movie in the technical sense, which is the miniatures, or the special effects in general. So the dropship, again, a brilliant piece of work by the Skotek brothers and a whole team of miniature effects artists. They actually used some techniques from what is it called? The British marionette sci-fi show. Is it Thunderbirds?
Could be.
So
is that British? I
Super
didn't know that was
Marionation, I think it was called the technology.
Called what?
Super Marionation.
Oh, the technique they used.
Marination is what Rambam's saying.
So one of the great scenes is when they after they've been decimated in the hive and they want to dust off and head back to the ship and nuke the site from orbit, but an alien gets on board and it crashes. First of all, the design of the drop ship was kind of based on, again, Vietnam era choppers.
Yeah,
and
most definitely.
And jets.
It looked like a hybrid of a Huey helicopter and a Harrier jet.
Yeah,
is what it looked like. It was really cool. Yeah,
and so when there's a great shot of the dropship crashing and everyone's scattering to get behind something as the dropship rolls past.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. That's not blue screened or green screened. It looked like it was projected behind them during the shot. Is what
You're
it looked
absolutely
like.
right. So they shot it and they projected it. So as it's rolling towards the camera, obviously a few more frames later, and it would be revealed that it just, was on a screen. Mm-hmm. They cut just in time, and then it did a reverse shot of the miniature crashing and exploding. And then they just cut back to the actors reacting. Mm-hmm. And that's just great editing to give that effect. But there's nothing to take you out of that moment because you're not seeing matte lines or anything like that. And again, this is a technique that they use now with The Mandalorian with the volume, where you're getting you're not getting any matte lines. You're getting the color. The lighting is, if the flames flare up on the screen, you see that lighting kind of what they call not ambient lighting, but there's a word for it, where you kind of get, in the frame, the lighting kind of hazes out on the edge of an actor. Mm-hmm. That 70s rock fan is with us. Welcome.
By the way, 1899, they use the volume too. Almost the whole show is filmed on volume.
Yeah, it's a great way to immerse the actors in the situation, and you don't have a problem with the again, matte lines or bad compositing, and again, just edits. Now with the Alien Queen, I mean, and again, this is great techniques. Hold on, I'll get back to the Alien Queen for a second. Just the shots of the dropship going over the colony. The whole colony obviously was a miniature, but in order to not reveal it, what did they do? They had you looking at the miniature through the cameras on the ship, which are degraded, and and have that video, light trails and that sort of thing. So it hides the fact that they're miniatures. Ridley Scott actually used the same tricks with the derelict ship. They would have you looking at it through the video feeds of the of the crew as they walk towards it. So all these tricks to kind of immerse you into the movie and not let you catch on to the fact that you're looking at a miniature. Mm-hmm. With the Alien Queen, even though they built a full-size one, what people don't realize is a lot of those shots are miniatures as well. They did some rear projection as well.
Yeah, I did notice that in that part of it. Yeah, very cool.
And the shots where she fights the Alien Queen in the power loader, combination mech suit forklift, which
get
again,
away from her, you bitch.
Yes. Just a great, thank you, 70s rock fan. Fantastic stream, everyone. Thanks for keeping me distracted while I'm laid out. Are you laid out? I'm sorry to hear that.
His back is killing him.
Man, I've been there. So what do we have for that 70s rock fan?
Let me find something.
Find something good. Tell me something good.
Maybe this.
You got any good stories I could tell them about how cool Nam is? You know, there's lots of things you expect in war. Carnage, the sleepless nights. But what they don't prepare you for is the incessant use of Fortunate Son.
That's perfect. He's a music man. He'll love that one. Yeah. No doubt.
I got it.
Incessant use of Fortunate Son.
Yes, we do hope you're feeling better. Back pains are terrible. Today they would have cast Gina Carano as Vasquez. Speaking of the Mandalorian.
Yeah, if they were to remake that movie, that'd be perfect casting, no doubt about it.
I want to cast Gina Carano in something.
Right.
That's not innuendo, by the way.
No,
Legitimately.
He legitimately wants to put her in something good. Yeah, she's good.
Okay. So the miniatures, the great thing about the power loader fight. So here's how they did the power loader fight. They had a full-size power loader. It actually was on wires, and it was a suit. It was a costume. There was a tall bodybuilder inside the power loader behind Sigourney Weaver. So when she's moving her arms, that's actually a muscle guy moving that stuff. Which I imagine it was made out of, foam rubber and boards and stuff, but it's probably still really heavy because it still had to be strong enough to support Sigourney Weaver in it, even though it's held up by wires. The Queen, again, made by Stan Winston Studios, and I'm sorry that we didn't get Alec Gillis in here. Maybe he'll still show up in the last half hour. It was built by Alec Gillis, Rick Lazzarini, and I'm blocking on the other names. I'm not going to spend time trying to remember everybody, but they all sculpted it together. But because there was a lot of action going on, in terms of arms swinging and the alien running and grabbing on and falling down into the airlock. A lot of that was actually miniatures and puppets. Mm-hmm. And they would just keep cutting back and forth very quickly between the miniatures and the live action. So, Sigourney Weaver would have her close-ups with the Queen in the same shot. And then, she would have, the flamethrower and the teeth snapping out at her. And then when she would pick up the Queen, that would be a miniature. And when she'd fall down the thing, that would be a miniature. And,
yeah, it's just amazing. You watch that movie now and, just imagine if they had used CGI instead of that.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have the same effect if you ask me. It looks so cool the way they did it with the miniatures and everything.
Completely immersive.
One of the best miniatures is the damn, the atmosphere generator, the whole place, whatever the hell they called that thing.
The atmosphere processor.
Yeah. Wow. That was amazing. And the lightning strikes around it and stuff. It was really cool.
I'm not quite sure how they did the lightning strikes, but they looked really good too. They must have just been burned into the film.
It was probably the same effects they use on lightsabers and stuff in the Star Wars movies. It's probably etched in, kind of thing.
Yeah. Animated in, cool. Done really well though. So the atmosphere processor, again, the scene where she gets to the top of the atmosphere processor where Bishop is supposed to be waiting for her and he's not there. Again, rear projection.
Yeah.
They were blowing the hell out of that miniature, filming it at a high frame rate. So things moved a bit slower. The flames moved slower. But they were, Sigourney Weaver and Carrie Henn were immersed in that. John, did Funko not make Power Loader and Aliens figs? Oh, I'm sure they did.
They did.
Funko.
But just being immersed in that environment, building that ahead of time, shooting it, getting that film back from the lab, and then projecting it behind Sigourney Weaver. There's a great shot of when she's climbing up on the ladder to get into the drop ship. There's no drop ship there at all. It's literally just a metal ladder with James Cameron with his camera hanging off of it while she and Carrie Henn are climbing up it, and it's on wires, so it's rocking back and forth while they're trying to climb it.
Just for some perspective too, because I'm a big Towering Inferno fan. That 70s rock fan did a show on Towering Inferno when I was on it. Imagine how big those models had to be. Those you say miniature, and everybody thinks small, but imagine how big they had to be to make flames look realistic.
Yeah.
Because if you do flames on something small, they found this out making Towering Inferno. If you do it on something small, it's not going to work because it looks like the flames are 5 stories tall and just looks fake. So you have to make that miniature a large scale miniature just to make the flames look realistic.
These days, that's always a problem when it comes to fire effects. Even now, people who get fire effects, they'll film fire and then they'll composite it into something. You get people that don't know how to composite to scale because flames have a scale.
I think we established when we were on that show doing the Towering Inferno, I think it was 7 stories tall, the model they made of that building.
Yeah.
And I think it was 7 stories, wasn't it? The 70s, I think it was 7 stories tall. Yeah.
They had the miniatures and I don't know for the interior of the atmosphere processor, but the atmosphere processor itself is probably about 10 feet high.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen photos of the crew standing next to it working. So it's pretty big. In terms of flames, though, there are ways using different materials and gases to kind of make the flames more granular.
You're right.
Or even, like you can blow dust into them or different gases. It'll kind of break up the flames and help with that. But amazing work. And the nuclear explosion was all cotton and lights underneath it. They literally built a mushroom cloud and had it underneath a table. So as it's flying away, you only see the nuclear cloud for about a second.
No, not very long at all. Yeah.
It's essentially all they did was they built a nuclear cloud out of cotton and had cotton all around it to, make it look like they're above the clouds. And they just blasted a really bright halogen light underneath it, stage light, that just made it white out. And as they did, somebody just pushed it up. So all you're seeing is a pre-made nuclear cloud being pushed up, but you don't see any of the telltale nuclear cloud, rolling out and mushrooming. It's just a really quick shot. That's all they could get away with. But again,
it's very cool though.
Yeah,
it looks
you
great.
don't need it.
It's really to establish the fact a blast wave's fixing to hit them. Really, is what the reason for the shot.
Yeah.
Ram
Bam is right. Bigatures.
Bigatures. Yeah, there you go. Not many.
By the way, I do have all the extended versions of Lord of the Rings, which come with literally, I don't know, something like 13 hours of behind the scenes. I've watched it all. It's funny because one of the actors, I forget his name, but one of the Scottish actors that plays a hobbit just like does an intro to one of them. And he's like, and do try and get out of the house every once in a while. Those miniatures, those bigatures are beautiful works of art, though. Absolutely stunning. The Minas Tirith miniature is, I hope that's in a museum somewhere because I'd love to see it. It's absolutely fantastic. But the miniatures of aliens are fantastic. And a lot of, here's something I want to talk about. And I've talked about it before in other places. My favorite scene in, there might be a dog barking, by the way. My favorite scene in the movie is the facehugger attack. And there's a story behind that, in that the facehugger was brought to life. Now, what was it? Alien Covenant, it was just a CGI facehugger. And it looked like my dog's barking. It looked exactly like what it is. Is that too loud? Can you guys still hear me over the dog?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay.
By the way, the Minas Tirith miniature was originally at Nashtek Marvel's Museum in Glenbrook, Iowa for 3 years, but now it's on permanent display at the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum in Hollywood, California.
Oh, wow. Oh, I've been there many times. I got to go see that. That's absolutely incredible. And ADI did an exhibit there. No,
sorry, that's the matchstick version. Sorry.
Oh, okay. The matchstick version.
Somebody built a matchstick version.
Oh, okay. That sounds like a lot of work too. Anyway, so the facehugger scene in Aliens, like I said, in Alien Covenant, they did a facehugger attack, and it looks exactly like what it was. It was a CGI facehugger, and it was, fine for what it was. But it is in Aliens, before they had CGI. The miniature puppet. No, I'm still working on that, but there will be an update on that. I'll go grab that before we finish the show if you're interested in seeing it. It's still a work in progress. I still got to do the hands and feet. The shame is the skill set of making good practical effects are being lost because everyone uses CGI. So actually, CGI has taken over some stuff, but CGI has actually proved to be a great tool for practical effects artists. There's still a lot of practical effects in use. Unfortunately, yes, correct. Some of the time it's practical effects that make it onto set, but then the CGI artists come along and paint over it or do enhancements on it. But it's great for rod removals, cable removals, that sort of thing. Now the practical effects artist can actually be in the shot with the practical effects, enhancing how it moves, and then be digitally painted out, where before it was all about hiding wires and different tricks, cropping the frame. But again, it worked great for Aliens. There's no CGI wire removal in there. The only CGI update to Aliens that I know of is that Lance Henriksen, in the scene where he gets torn in half, when the airlock is open and he reaches out to grab Newt so she doesn't get sucked out, you can see the hole he's standing in, with his fake torso. Yeah. So James Cameron went in and digitally painted that out, which I have mixed feelings of, because one, seeing the hole he's standing in breaks the immersion, but two, going back later and CGIing something, I'll let it slide because it's, a tiny
I
thing.
won't. I want it the way I saw it. I think
they fixed it in post.
Yeah. By the way, there are two other shots or three other shots in that movie where you see, there's one shot with a miniature where you see somebody's face over the top of a building, like a giant face. It's like just for a few frames, and you never spot it in a million years. I never did. It was someone else that pointed it out to me. You can see a crewman's foot kind of dangling out when Frost falls down the shaft and he's on fire. Okay. You can see a crewman's foot off to the side, but I always just assumed it was someone hived up, and then behind the Queen in one shot in the reveal, if you kind of look off to the side, you can see one of the puppeteers for the Queen, their faces back there. Oh, wow. So, little mistakes here and there, but I was going with that. I was talking about Lance Henriksen standing in the hole, different mistakes. Oh, okay. So anyway, practical effects. That's it. Yeah, practical effects have, some jobs have gone to CGI, but practical effects are still alive. There's still legacy effects. Alec Gillis, again, he was doing Studio ADI, but now he has his own Studio Gillis. There's spectral motion. So this, there's still people making creature suits and animatronics and using them. So it hasn't gone away. It's just
no, it hasn't gone away. And if you remember, just look at the James Bond franchise when they made what was it? Die Another Day, I think, or which one was it with Madonna was in it and Halle Berry?
Yeah.
The one with the ice castle in it, and the most hideous thing in it was he was riding this rocket car. It was the last Pierce Brosnan one. It's the one that basically killed Pierce Brosnan's run as Bond.
Not the parachute scene with the ice tidal wave.
Exactly. That right there, they realized, hey, we got to get back to practical effects, real stuntmen doing real stuff, doing tough guy stuff, real car chases, real car wrecks. We got to get back to that because this has gotten way out of hand.
Again, it's going back to when you have a hammer, every problem looks like a nail when it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's essentially, and Tom Cruise is making a career out of
practical
enticing the
stunts.
audience.
Yeah, he's doing stuff at his age that, I mean, just the man's crazy. He's out of his damn mind. It's what he is. But
the thing is that, I mean, there's still, with James Bond particularly, there was kind of that idea, and also with Mission Impossible, it's like there's going to be some crazy stunt, and it's not going to be a trick. It's going to be a stunt.
It's going to be him actually doing that stuff. Yeah,
So I'll get back to practical effects in terms of the face hugger scene in Aliens, because that was a scene where you have a face hugger that it moves, it runs across the floor, it jumps, its tail wraps around people, its fingers are wriggling, it's got the tubule coming out that's going to implant the egg down her throat. And essentially, they didn't know how they're going to do it. It's James Cameron who came up with how it was going to be shot. And again, Alec said in an interview, he said there's a lot of directors who they're just afraid to do stuff like that, where James Cameron really embraces it. Essentially, what they did was they came up with, I think it was Rick Lazzarini made the mechanism that was kind of like a pull toy that had legs that moved, and they would pull it backwards across the floor because they couldn't pull it forwards. It wouldn't work, but they pull it by its tail across the floor as the legs did their thing. And there's rain coming down, the sprinklers. And James Cameron's like, we'll do it in reverse. And everyone's kind of chiding him, going like, well, the sprinkler water is coming down. It's going to be, in reverse. It's going to look, he's like, no. That's not how the camera works. He's like, you're not going to see the individual drops in reverse. You're just going to see the chatter of the water hitting the floor and the little like reflective light glinting here and there from the rain coming down. And they did it. And that's exactly what it looks like. You're seeing the film reverse. So it looks like the facehuggers running across the floor. Then what they did was they propped it up on the thing that it leaps onto, and they just pulled it down through an eyelet through the floor. And then they reversed that footage. So it looks like it's leaping up and landing exactly how they want it in frame, on its mark. And then they cut again, and then they just pulled it towards the camera. Or I don't know if they put it on the camera and then pulled it. No, they pulled it towards the camera.
They pulled it towards the camera. It looks like it jumps at them. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're just seeing, you're in the moment. You're not watching, you're not saying, oh, there are individual cuts here, but you see in the cuts of the action cutting back and forth to her. And then it jumps towards the camera. And then again, they get a shot of Sigourney Weaver holding it, pushing it away, and the tail unwraps from her neck. They reverse that, so it looks like she's catching it and it's grabbing onto her neck. And then they just cut to another shot of her performing, where they've got the puppeteers wriggling the things and she's struggling with it. And the other actors are all around her, all providing a performance. And Stan Winston famously said, and I wish Alec had shown up, because he's the one that told me all of these stories. Stan Winston said, why our effects are so believable is because Sigourney believes it. He says it's her.
The actor's got to sell it, no doubt. Yeah,
it's her performance, and that was one of the things when I was making the Quantum Terror that was kind of the most challenging thing. Was I made the monsters, I made how they worked, and then I really didn't kind of anticipate that I would say to the actors, this is what you're going to do. And they just kind of look at me going like, okay, what's it going to do? I'm like, well, it's going to do these things, but it's going to be you that operate, making it move because it's in your hands or whatever it is. So I really had to work with them, where I think Sigourney Weaver is such a great actress that she intuitively knows how to work with these props. And she's, from everything I've heard about her, she's a real team player. She doesn't show up and, like, I'm the star and I want my trailer. Like, she gets in there with the cast and crew, and she works with them, and she works with the effects people so that she's, because she wants the performance, the movie to do well. And I wish, I think that's something that a lot of modern celebrities have forgotten. They want to go in there and like Jennifer Lawrence, like, I'm the first. It's like
diva.
Yeah. Like, you're not
Diva
the first.
complex? Yeah. Mhm.
And you're not doing anything, you're showing up and you're saying your lines, and yeah, you're giving a performance, but there's so much more to acting in a movie than just being an actor. And Sigourney Weaver really kind of became the leader on that set, not just to the cast, but the crew, because the crew was ready to go to war with James Cameron. He was pissing everyone off. And it was because of Sigourney Weaver kind of being the go-between, because she's for the director. She's for James Cameron, but she's also seeing that there's a problem with the crew. And it was actually her at one point, the crew was ready to walk, and James Cameron was ready to pull the plug on production and move it somewhere else. And it was Sigourney Weaver that stepped in and said, let's have a meeting, And according to the show on Netflix, The Movies That Made Us, James Cameron actually came out and said, look, I know I've been tough on you. And he apologized, and he said, but we're behind schedule. We really got to get this movie made. And after that, the atmosphere changed, no pun intended, in on the set, and they really all went to work and got that movie done. And, and then when it came out, they did some screenings, and there was, I think, Bill Paxton was there with Michael Biehn, and they did a screening, and Bill Paxton was just beside himself, excited. I guess the shot where the chest burster comes out of the woman in the hive and everyone screams in the theater. Bill Paxton just grabs Michael Biehn and just goes, "It's going to be a huge hit, man. This is the best." And it's like calling people. People said Bill Paxton was calling him up and goes like, "Effing roller coaster ride, man. This is the best." To have that enthusiasm for it. So, it's just a moment in time. And again, Alec told me there was a real sense from the beginning. They knew they were making something special. And that's, I feel like it's just lightning strikes in a bottle twice with Aliens. And
they're two very different movies. The first one was a horror film, no doubt about it, placed in space. And the second one is an all-out, balls-out action movie. It's fantastic. Yeah.
And but it all makes sense, because that's the problem a lot of horror movies have. A lot of movies in general is they try and just repeat what the first movie did. What James Cameron did was he did two things. One, and he said this in his director's commentary, he really went to school on how Ridley Scott did what he did. The second thing is that he said to himself, okay, this event happened. What would be the logical follow-up?
Right. Kind of like what Robert Kirkman did with The Walking Dead. We've seen plenty of these zombie movies, and we know they eat people and stuff, but what happens after the movie? How do they keep surviving in that environment? Yeah. It's very cool. Very cool concept he came up with. It was very
and it's essentially, it's right. It's like, okay, there's killer monsters out there. We send in the Marines or send in the cavalry.
What would we do for real? Yeah. We'd send in the military to take them out, right? Yeah.
No doubt. It's so essentially, and James Cameron, I think himself, he used so many of his best ideas in Aliens, because originally he was writing a script called Mother, and the idea was two mothers from opposing worlds fighting, and that's what the Queen and Ripley is the mother.
Final scene of that movie right there. Yeah,
it's two mothers. Yeah, and he always had the power loader idea. If you watch Xenogenesis, there's a power loader fight scene in that. It's done in stop motion.
Yeah.
Military in space, which is Robert Heinlein's idea. There's a joke when they made Starship Troopers, when they were pitching it, they said, we want to do Starship Troopers. And everyone joked, didn't James Cameron already do it?
Right. There it is. It's called Aliens. Look, I saw this movie. It was I think it came out in the summer. I'm not sure exactly the date, but I was visiting my father at the time, and he said, let's go see this movie. And he was blown away just by the motion detectors these guys were using in it. He just thought that was the coolest thing ever,
And again, another, a continuation of what they did in the first Alien,
Yeah.
The fact that they have that technology, and some of it looks dated now. The technology that they use, like the cameras are, this big mounted on the side of their helmets, and we've got cameras this big now.
Yeah, but I don't know. It stands up to me. I've watched it several times since, and it stands up to me. I just think it's fantastic.
Because
I've
everything,
that movie.
However dated you might want to see the technology, everything in it is timeless and wraps you up in what's going on. Yep. There's nothing in there, it's not like some other sci-fi movies.
The only good bug is a dead bug. That's right.
We should do a Starship Troopers episode.
Yeah.
There's nothing. This is a mistake a lot of sci-fi movies make, is they try and wrap you up in the technology,
and forget the humanity.
Yeah, I like the futurist stuff, but it's, if you just rely on the technology, what's going to happen is 10 years down the line, something that seemed really advanced is just going to seem quaint. I think that's the one thing that a lot of science fiction authors kind of, it's a risk. It's something they have to contend with. You either set it so far into the future that you go, no one will ever question this technology because it's so far in the future, and then 10 years later we have something better, or the opposite, which drives me crazy. And this is my big problem with, I wouldn't say it's a problem with it, but it's a problem it suffers from, is Blade Runner. We're already pretty much up to that time, and now, or 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is like, it's 2001 was over 20 years ago, and we're still watching 2001, which is, again, a timeless movie, but we're watching something that's supposed to be taking place in 2001, and we're going, we don't have centrifugal force space stations or moon bases or traveling to Jupiter yet. So it's a minor quibble, because they're still brilliant movies. We wouldn't send actual people, we would send drones in. Yeah, that's the CG series. Roughnecks was great too. I heard that. I never saw Roughnecks, but I heard that was a great
that's my response.
What's that?
They have to send real people unless you are going to turn the drones loose with AI. Then the distances involved would require operators to be close by. They'd have to send real people anyway. There's innocent people involved. You can't use drones in that environment. They can't distinguish between enemy and real people. You'd have to use real human beings to go. If they were faced now in our time with a hostage situation like this, they're not sending drones in there. They're sending real people that can see what's going on.
Yeah. Who knows what it'll be like in the future? But honestly, I think, storytelling as it goes, we have to give a little, we can logic any movie to death, how it might be done differently, but ultimately we have to give the writers and directors a little leeway so that they can tell an entertaining story. And Aliens is absolutely that story. And I think, we're still getting, it was just announced the new Alien movie is going to be called Alien Romulus, which is a terrible title. First of all, just rolls off the tongue weird. Alien Romulus. It's just doesn't work that way. But
I haven't watched any of them since the third one. No.
Oh, well, I made an entire series of videos on why I think Alien 3 fails on every level. And I know there are people that like it, but again, it's just, there's too many story problems. There's effects problems. There's, let's see, quick AI question before you end. It's gone. A lady friend of mine said her mom's Google Assist got sassy with her and said, "Don't talk to me like that. What do you think of that?" Yeah, there is actually a plug-in that people are. I've heard varying things. They're either accidentally downloading it or it got into the system. Essentially,
I'm sure the Japanese invented it. These are the people that pay to get insulted. So, yeah.
Well, and I pointed out it's not real AI.
Yeah, yeah, there could be a SaaS plugin. You know, again, with AI, you're dealing with complex algebra. So complex algebra is going to do whatever you ask it to. And that's, you know, essentially like any tool, we have to be responsible with it for sure. And my AI conversation personally is strictly in the arts. I fully acknowledge that I've said it before, AI is like a boulder you roll down a hill. You got to know exactly where you want it to go. But if you are even a little bit off, you could do some real damage with it. So, you know,
Krampus, they're still limited by physics. You could set up hubs, yes, but you're still limited on the distance because it doesn't matter. The signal is limited by how physics works in the real universe.
There's a great scene in the deleted shot in Aliens where you see the colony in that workstation where they're holed up in. You see what that's like active. And there's a guy coming at another guy, like the boss. He's like, hey, he's like, what? He's like, some mom and pop expedition wants to know if they've got a claim on where they're at. And he's like, why wouldn't they? He's like, I don't know, because somebody from Earth sent a signal asking us to check it out. And he's like, look, he's like, it takes 2 weeks for a message to get out here and 2 weeks to get the message back. Mm-hmm. And when I ask, the answer is always don't ask. So why am I even going to bother?
Yeah.
You know, as far as the moon, you know, signals to the moon go, you send a signal to the moon. I believe it's an 8-minute delay. If I'm not
No.
Not 8 minutes?
8 seconds.
8 seconds. Oh, 8 minutes is the distance that light takes to travel from the sun to the earth.
Yeah, so, and you've got a 7-minute delay on Mars. That's why the Mars rovers perform an action and wait, and perform an action and wait, or they're given a set of instructions and they do that, and then they wait for another set of instructions.
Yeah, and why it's so important that they get the math right on things like landings, because essentially they send a rover down there. They're literally waiting to see if it made it or if it crashed. That's why you see those shots of them erupting in applause and cheering when they finally get the signal back. Yeah, it's landed and it's not destroyed. So, but anyway,
they've done that once. That's because we still got a few minutes.
No, we still have 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Yeah, right there on your screen, buddy. Yeah. We're at 1 hour, 52 minutes and 45 seconds.
Got it. Oh, up here. Yeah, I keep checking my clock.
It's right above your head.
The problem was when we lost that was it the atmosphere, Mars atmosphere thing. I don't remember what name it was. Basically, what had happened was the one person or the company that made it was using metric, but they didn't tell NASA, and NASA was still using imperial, and that's why it crashed.
Oh man, you think they would check that? That seems like an obvious thing to.
Yeah, you would think that, but that's what happened.
We're talking about the government. We're talking about NASA. Come on, guys.
And that's why Star Trek invented subspace. It's a magical solution around that is, you know, having conversations across half the quadrant. But and another thing I like about Aliens is, you know, I mean, we're still dealing with faster than light travel, but they do it in a way. Let's see. Lady friend wanted to ask that. I'll tell her about the plugin thing.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Tell her to get rid of that assistant that's watching you.
Yeah. Someone gave my daughter one for her birthday. And my mother had gotten us one for Christmas a while back, and I said, "Sorry, Mom." I'm like, "Mom, take this back. I don't want it in the house." But my daughter's got it in her room. But I figure, she's 11 years old. It's in her room. It's not, going to pick up anything that's like credit card numbers or anything like that.
Right.
But I'm still, I still don't want those things in my house for the most part. But the great thing about Aliens, like I was saying, it's a James Cameron, both Ridley Scott and James Cameron took science fiction and made it feel grounded in reality, and made it feel authentic. And again, it's through the sets, it's through just set dressing, things like the chairs in the original Alien. You'll notice that like there's cracks in them and there's tape on them, like in a lived-in environment you would see. Mm-hmm. And it's the performances. The actors aren't talking about their technology. They're just kind of, bullshitting about.
Hey, all of that can be great.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't have a good story, you can polish a turd so much and it's not going to shine. Okay.
Well,
the story is great at the heart of it, and so, the technical stuff is great. The acting was awesome, but the story was really, really good. It was such a departure from the first one. I don't think anybody really expected what we got out of that movie. I think they went in thinking it was going to be a horror movie, and they came out thinking, wow, how much fun was that,
Again, this goes to something that I think we just don't get in movies now, because we all take the technology to create whatever we want for granted. At the time, James Cameron, not only did he write a great story, but he wrote a great story that he knew he wanted to direct and played to his strengths as a director, and played to what he knew he could do with what was available. Now that factor has been removed from his writing, because now he just writes whatever he wants and he doesn't worry about how it's going to be done. But when he was writing the facehugger scene or the Queen power loader battle scene or any of that stuff, he was writing thinking, this is how I'm going to do it. And this is what I mean by I've said before, the medium is the message. The story, everyone says the number one thing is a great story. But I think the key ingredient to writing a great story is writing it with the medium you are going to work with in mind, and having excitement and passion and craftsmanship, the craftsman's skills to make that medium shine the way it is. And for James Cameron, it was, I know how I'm going to use film and editing and miniatures and practical effects, or special effects, because no one called them practical effects back then.
No.
And I'm going to tell a story that makes all of that shine and be as cool as possible. And limitations allow creativity. I agree with that. I think also it's not just limitations, but it's testing the limitations of what's at your disposal. I think the only thing that James Cameron has done with Avatar is really just try and push the boundaries of how realistic CGI and motion capture and virtual environments can look. And kudos to him for that. But I think he's pushed it about as far as it can go in the direction that he's pushed it in, which is just more realism, which, I mean, realism is not why we go to the movies ultimately. Anyway, Martin, it sounded like you were going to say something.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that limitations allow creativity. I would say that limitation foster or begets creativity.
Well, you have to get creativity. You have to get creative if you don't have everything you want at your disposal. And it's that kind of, it's almost the audience is subconsciously going like, oh, that's really clever that he thought to do it that way. I've actually enjoyed this stream, Chris. Good job for once. But I believe it's time to wrap it up. So I will say, one more comment. Krampus Jesus. Ajibus. AI should only be used for memes. We don't need to make art that fast. Memes need to be made fast for relevance. Well, it's not up to anybody how anything is used. It's people are going to figure out ways to use it that suit them. Plug my shit. I've had it up the whole time. If you want to share the screen, Martin, really quick. So everybody,
right. Sorry.
Everybody, follow me on Linktree. I'll post that in the thingy.
Yes.
And subscribe star through the Linktree. And I also, because Alec was going to be here, I was going to plug the books: The Making of Harbinger Down, Aliens vs. Predator. They're all books on Amazon. Go look them up.
Hey, Martin, show that picture that I got for you to share real quick.
Are you done?
I'm
Chris?
done. We can take that away.
Okie dokie.
And while you share that picture, yep.
For as many horror stories as we hear about Cameron, sure looks like Sigourney's having a good time on this set. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that there were the stories are numerous from this set. Some are horror stories, and some are people having a great time. Mm-hmm. Yes, Christopher means bearer of Christ. So thank you to
Thanks, Martin,
in the chat.
The goddamn robots, John!
Penny, who isn't here, but she's watching Avatar. D-Bud Martin, Crumpus Jeebus, Alex Moore, Bill Barclay, Kingsport Hal, Sean Estep, I always say that wrong. Bam Bam 3000, Shinosky, Dragon Ruse, Peter Bakeman Fan Site, that 70s Rock Fan, and of course, thank you to Das Wolfen, Joe's Atmosphere, and Martin. I hope you guys had a good time. I love this movie, and I love all of you.
Always.
Take us out.
Hey guys, thanks for watching Pop Culture Minefield. If you've enjoyed the show, please make sure to like, subscribe, and don't forget to click the bell icon for updates on our shows and channel. Also, please leave a comment, and we'd like to know what you thought of the episode, as well as letting us know if there's something you'd like us to cover in a future episode. Don't forget that you can become a member of Pop Culture Minefield now. Make sure to visit our membership page and merch store at popcultureminefield.com. You can always find Pop Culture Minefield on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch.